Hi, we meet again. After our last cookie webinar, hundreds of questions keep coming, both to Tulip emails and my personal IG, Louis Tanuhadi. Now, I will try to answer this question one by one. There are some questions that are similar and I don't read all of them. One answer will answer to all the same question, such as the use of cornstarch in the cookie, should the dough be cooled before baking, and others. Let's start with the first question. When baking a chewy chocolate chip cookies, what kind of dough consistency should we be aiming for? And what kind of chocolate should we use so that the chocolate will stay melted when the cookie is cooled down? Yeah. So the most important, the dough should be firm, but not too tough or too soft. During baking time, the dough will rise or spread. If the dough too soft, the end of the result of the cookie will be too thin because spreading too much. If you want to have the chocolate still melted, even the cookie already cooled, you have no choice, just using Tulip Chocolate Filling. Please see the video how to make the giant chocolate lava. Next question. How can I get cookies which are not too sweet but spread well? How about the right cookies, flour, sugar, and butter ratio? Actually, the main basic ratio to make cookie are 1, 2, 3. 1 part of sugar, 2 part of butter or fat, and 3 part of flour. If you want cookie not too sweet, yes, you can reduce the sugar a little bit. And make sure your cookie dough have enough air during mixing to get good result, spread well. So, next question. In order to make chewy cookies, how do we know the cookies are done in the oven? Perhaps there are clues as to the texture of hardness of the cookie before taking them out from the oven. Thank you. Number 1, follow the recipe instruction. How long baking time and how many degrees for the heat. Number 2, based on your experience with your oven. Every oven have different heat parameter. When you see the surface of your cookie is already golden brown, how many minutes more you put more time in the oven? Basically, time for chewy cookies should be high heat, around 190 to 200 degrees Celsius, but short time, less than 20 minutes. Next question. I want to ask, sometimes the recipe in the cookies are too sweet. Is there any tips to have a good cookie with less sweet, such as having a chocolate chip cookies or something else? Like I said, you can reduce the amount of the sugar little bit or using icing sugar than custard sugar because icing sugar lesser sweet than custard sugar. Also, the most important, if you want to use chocolate chips, please using a good quality chocolate chips. My recommendation for sure, Tulip Chocolate. So, next question. My question, in some recipe, they recommend to put the dough in the chiller prior baked. Is there any issue if we skip that step? Does it will impact to the result? Yes. I recommend to put your cookie doughs into the chiller prior baked. During the process of making, the temperature of the dough already raised, maybe too warm because of your body heat, your palm. So I recommend to rest the dough in the chiller before baking to maintain the shape of the cookie, not to wider, spread wider during baking. That's my recommend. The next question. Is it a must to use mixer to make the cookie batter? Can we use whisk instead? Yes, you can use it. But take time and tiring, yeah, because you need everything by yourself, no machine. Next question. Is Dutch cocoa powder better than regular cocoa powder? When do you recommend using Dutch cocoa powder in making chocolate flavor cookie? What is Dutch cocoa powder actually? And what is regular cocoa powder? Let me explain. Dutch cocoa powder is mean the cocoa powder already processed, put alkalis in it to make the color become darker and the aroma stronger. The other one is natural cocoa powder, which is cocoa powder purely processed without alkalis. The color is pale, brown pale. I cannot say Dutch cocoa powder are better than natural cocoa powder. Depend of the function. I'm not saying regular, yeah, because mostly in the market 80% are Dutch cocoa powder. They already having alkalis inside. Next question. How long you can store cookie dough in the refrigerator? Because I would like to just to get as many as I want to eat and bake. Therefore, there will be what is I'm not really clear with this one. Therefore, there will still be cookie dough left in the refrigerator. Yes, you can keep in a month as long you put in the tight container or wrap it tight to avoid the moisture and losing the aroma after several months. That's my answer. Next, for crispy cookies, which fat work better? If we use combination, what is the best ratio or composition? So for me, for the best result of crispy cookie, use shortening because shortening is 0% water content. If you want to mix, yeah, that's your choice. I mean, 30% butter, 70% shortening, or yeah, it's up to you. Do I need to turn off the fan when I'm baking cookies? This is the next question. Yes. If you make crispy cookies, yes. But if you make chewy cookies or soft cookies, no. Because the fan function is to evaporate the moisture. Chef, I would like to know what temperature used for macaron. Is it upper and lower heat or just lower heat? My answer is depend on your oven. You need to believe your own oven. In my oven, if I bake macaron, I using just lower heat around 145 to 150 around 12 minutes. But I don't know with your oven. Okay. Next question. Chef, how to make cookies that is last long without preservatives? Make sure there is no much moisture in your cookies and make sure that you use tight container to store your cookies. Moisture and oxygen is the two main it is the two main factors for bacteria to grow. So if you having a lot of moisture in your cookies and you not put in the tight container, I'm afraid then the shelf life of your product is very short. Next question. Around how many minutes should we? I don't understand with this one also. Okay, around how many minutes should we brown butter without burning it? Okay, so it is mean you want to make brown butter. I don't know. What are you using? Are you using gas stove or are you using electric stove or are you using induction stove? I cannot answer you how many minutes because I have no idea what kind of facility do you have. Okay, sorry with this. I cannot answer because I'm not sure with your stove. Next, why sometimes the surface of my cookies isn't cracked? Cannot crack. Okay, so there are 4 reasons. Number 1, baking temperature too low, too much moisture in the dough is too firm, and maybe you are not using baking soda. So you need to check. If your baking temperature too low, then your cookies will not crack. Okay, how to apply Maillard reaction to a cookie? Okay, to get the color of your cookie, there are three steps also. Number 1, 3 factors. High sugar content in your dough recipe because sugar create caramelize. Number 2, using baking soda than baking powder because baking soda give you color, more darker color. And then baking temperature control because if your baking temperature too low, then the Maillard reaction will not happen. Yeah, the caramel of the sugar is not really I mean, the color is not too brown. What I mean. Okay. Next, if we use shortening, mixing with butter for crispy cookies, what is the best ratio for both? Okay, same question actually with just one. Yeah. Why you mixing butter with shortening? Because you want to get better aroma and taste, right? It is depend of the butter quality. If you use too many, too many butter brand in the market, so I cannot answer. This is individual taste. I cannot answer this brand better than the other brand. So if you use shortening, for sure your product will more crispy, but the aroma will be lesser than butter. So you can do trial for yourself about the composition. What is the best ratio? Okay. When doubling or tripling recipe, is it as simple as a doubling or tripling its ingredients? Do we need to adjust certain ingredients or ratios? You need to make sure your mixer capacity. That is the most important thing. Doubling or tripling or recipe it is easy. You just measure it. But you need to make sure your production capacity. For cookies, maybe you can hold the baking process, but for the bread or cakes, you cannot wait. So you need to bake when the time is there, okay? What cookie sheets work best for baking cookies? I can recommend you using silpat or silicone mat because silicone mat is thicker than baking paper. So to avoid the cookie will burn in the bottom, yeah, on the bottom of the surface of the cookies. And then also silicone mat, you can bake more than 300 times. So totally it will be cheaper if you using a silicone mat compared with baking paper. Next question, will tulip dark chocolate compound stay melted when the cookie is cooled down if we mix the chunks into the dough? No, because compound is made from vegetable fat, and then the chocolate will bake to compact again to set again in the cool temperature. So the right choice, if you want to make melted chunks into the dough, please using tulip bittersweet couverture. You buy in 1 kilo shape, and then you chop, and then you fold the chunk into the dough, and the result will be nice. Next question, whether the technique and the time also affect the crispiness of the cake? Okay. I think you asking for the cookie because today we discuss about cookie. Sure, the recipe, the process, the most important things is baking time. Low heat and long baking time, because the longer time you put your cookie into the oven, all the moisture will gone, yeah, because of the baking time. Next question, is there any substitute for the almond flour in macarons? I can recommend you using hazelnut powder or walnut powder. You still can use it, but don't replace it with coconut powder. Then become macaron, not macaron. Yeah, it is totally different between macaron and macaron. How to keep chewy cookie chewy for the longer time? I'm not recommend if you having a chewy cookie for the longer time, because the moisture in the chewy cookie will grow the microorganism faster, and then the molds will be easier to grow there. Enjoy your chewy cookies in just several days only. That's what I can recommend for you. Next question. Is it true that leaving a slice of bread will help maintain the cookie's moisture? Yes, correct. Because the moisture of the bread will be absorbed by the cookies, especially if chocolate cookie. Then your cookie will be having more moisture, so your cookie will be more chewy. Next question. I noticed some chocolate chip cookie recipe incorporate milk and or heavy cream as a liquid ingredients. How does this affect the overall texture and outcome of the cookie, as opposed to the traditional recipe that omit these ingredients? Yes, heavy cream contain minimum 32% of fat. So this gives you better taste and smoother texture of the cookie because of the fat content in the cream. um, it is better you put, especially if you making chewy cookies or soft cookie, because the fat and then the liquid will give you more moisture. Hi, when we are baking cookie or biscuit at our home for our consumption, can we put 2 or 3 days all together in our home oven for baking? Yeah, I don't know your oven, but should be okay if you just baking cookie, not cakes or bread. For example, looks, I have my little oven toaster here for my home cooking. If I want to make my own cookies at home, I can use it that one. But because it's small, then I can put directly 2 layer of cookie trays there. It is okay if you are baking cookies, but not for bread or cakes. Okay. When you bake cookies, what is the usual shelf life of cookie products for storing that is still good in quality and safe to eat? Difficult to answer for me, because is it crispy, is it chewy or soft cookie? What fat you are using? Butter, margarine, oil or shortening? What liquid you are using? Eggs, milk or creams? Every product have own shelf life. So I cannot answer you, depend of what product you are making. Next, long question. Hello, Chef Louis. For chocolate chip cookies, I usually use granulated sugar for my dough. But at the end, turns out that after the baked cookies still have the sugar grain. I've already done the creaming method, the butter already at the room temperature. I've already asked my relative about this issue. And they said the sugar can melt with the butter in that method. Just do it a little bit longer. But as I know, the creaming cannot do for a long time. Is the size of the sugar affect the cookie? If I use the custard sugar or powdered sugar, will the result different? Thank you, chef. Because of the granulated sugar size that you are using too rough, too coarse, then difficult of the sugar to dissolve during the mixing process. So I recommend you to use powdered sugar to make cookies. There is no difference for the texture. Yes, if you're using granulated sugar, because of granulated sugar sometimes it's not dissolved 100%, then will absorb more moisture. So that's only the difference. But for the cookie, especially crispy cookie, I recommend you to using powdered sugar or icing sugar. Do you have any ideal ratio to combine chocolate chip and chocolate chunk in the cookie? As much as you can. Just using Tulip Chocolate. Do you still remember my chocolate chip cookie recipe that I gave to my friend, because she asked me to create a cookie, chocolate chip cookie with the chocolate chip as much as I can, she said. So that's why I make a very big chocolate chip cookie on top of the thin layer of a cookie. So if you still remember when I do the webinar, you can see it's something different. Okay. Can you suggest gluten-free cookie or vegan cookie recipe that's still crispy? Thank you. So my answer, wait for my next webinar. Okay, Tulip team, please invite me again. Then we will do another webinar for the gluten-free cookie. Hi chef, if I use the vegan butter, is it affect the result of the chocolate chip cookies? No problem at all. Margarine or shortening are vegan fat. If you want make vegetarian cookies, what should I change for eggs? Easy. Don't use egg, because some cookie recipe are not using egg, just sugar, fat, and flour. Okay. Do you have any suggestion on aging cookies? Sorry, I have no idea with this question. What do you mean? Is it like macaron? Because macaron need to aging the mixture before baking to have a good result for the surface and the texture. Or aging like biscotti. You need to aging the biscotti overnight before the second baking to get crispier texture. So maybe that's what you ask, yeah, about the aging cookies. Next question. Is it possible to substitute baking powder or soda to other ingredients? Is it possible to use sourdough, wild yeast in cookies making? Is it easy to or really difficult process making sourdough cookie for business? First, we must know the use of this levain, which is to give air to the dough so that the texture of the cookies will be crisper, not totally expand or develop the volume. That's the main purpose, to give the air. If we use sourdough to give premium impression, that may be a good idea, but this is no longer part of the cookie category, but more towards to the dry bread. In Indonesia, very popular baglen. It is a dry bread, which maybe you can make using natural yeast, giving a premium impression. So that what I can answer. Can I refrigerate cookies? It's hard to keep it outside during end season. Okay. Yes, you can do as long in the very tight container. Of, if you're using very tight container, you can keep the moisture and also to avoid ants. Okay. Next question. What is the best flour to use in making cookies? Would you recommend using combination all-purpose flour and cake flour, for example? Okay, medium flour is the most appropriate. Protein content is only 9 to 11%, and yes, you can mix all-purpose flour and cake flour to get the right protein content. You know, if you make a cookie using a flour with a high protein flour, then you will create more gluten in your cookie. Then your cookie will getting tougher and harder, right? But if you using very low flour, then your cookie getting more easy to melt in your mouth. More, I'm not saying crispy, but easy to dissolve. Some cookie people prefer having some cookie which is easy to melt in your mouth. So you can mix it, or for me, the best cookie using medium flour, 9 to 11% protein content. What if you use powdered sugar for the cookie? Oh yeah, you will shorten the working process of making fat and sugar, and that is good because when you mixing not too long, then the fat does not get mushy, and then which will make the texture of the cake, the cookie remain firm but not hard. Next, what is the difference between palm sugar and brown sugar in making cookies? For the crispiness? No, no, no. Palm sugar is made from the coconut tree, and then with the sap of the coconut tree, which is cooked until thick and then dried. Brown sugar is white sugar added with molasses in sugarcane juice, or also called molasses. So the function is not make it crunchy, but the contrary. The molasses content in sugar will absorb moisture, so it is a highly recommend when you making chewy or soft cookie using brown sugar. So not making crispy, the opposite, Next question, if we wrap the cookies with tulip chocolate filling, okay, maybe what you mean is if we wrap the cookie dough with the tulip chocolate filling, will this make the cookies soggy after some time? Yes, because the fat and sugar content in the chocolate will add moisture to the dough. What can I substitute for egg? Because some kids are allergic to eggs. Easy, don't use egg in your recipe. Many cookies recipe without egg. Yeah. Hi chef, can I use salted butter instead the unsalted butter to make cookie? Will it make it any different texture? Thank you. Yes, you can use salted butter, no problem at all. But in texture, you will have no difference. But some people who are sensitive enough to taste will feel the cookies that you made more salty. But if we are using unsalted butter and only add a little salt, the cookies will more tasty, not more salty, but more tasty. Okay. Which type of oven is the best produce in the high quality cookies? For me, a convection oven will have a better result for baking cookies, especially if you make a crispy cookies. The fan in the oven will remove moisture more optimally. Okay, do you recommend using cornstarch in cookies? If you want less sugar, what do you add? So, the addition of cornstarch or tapioca starch will make the cookie dissolve easily in the mouth. For example, sago cheese cookies. For less sugar, it is only possible to reduce sugar in crispy types of cookies, but not only for soft or chewy cookies because the high sugar content will make moisture in the cookie. So I can answer, if you want to less sugar, yeah, you just reduce the sugar. But I not recommend for the chewy type of cookie because chewy type or soft cookie you need to having high sugar content. Hi, it is Leah. Do we need to chill the dough before baking? Thank you. I answered you already. It will definitely simplify the work process, forming and arranging on the baking sheet and maintaining the body shape, but not for improving flavor. Because during the process, I told you already, the temperature of the dough will raise. So that's why it will be better if you put in the fridge just before baking time. Okay. Can we just replace plain flour with almond flour for gluten-free cookies, chef? Or should we add other ingredients to gain the same texture? Thank you. For some types of cookie recipe, it might be possible to replace flour with ground almonds or another nut powder. But we won't get the same texture. Instead, we can use cornstarch or tapioca starch or both to have a similar texture. So you can replace the plain flour with tapioca or maybe cornstarch. But the texture will be more dense, yeah, will more easy to melt in your mouth, yeah, the cookie. Next, how to get good spread size for cookie but still crispy outside and chewy inside. Should I increase butter and sugar? Using brown sugar and add a bit of cream instead of butter. So I mentioned you before, brown sugar will absorb the moisture. How do you put filling in cookie? Please see my video how to make giant lava cookies. You can learn how to put the chocolate filling in the dough. When we use palm sugar for healthier version cookies, can you give any tips to store it so the crispiness stays longer? Thank you. Oh, difficult. Why? Because palm sugar, brown sugar, very easy to absorb moisture. If you cannot change the recipe or formula, change the shape of the cookie. Don't make it too thick. Bake in the low temperature and take a longer time. Use tightly vacuum packaging, then it maintains your crispiness of the cookie. Next, I once made a large batch of chocolate chip cookie dough, good for around 400 pieces in one go. I noticed that the cookies that were baked on a later time turned darker even though both were at the same temperature and baking time. The chocolate chips may have melted and mixed into the dough. Hence for the darker cookies. How do we avoid this? I know the problem. Adjust the capacities of your equipment. If the mixer you are using is only able to accommodate for the 3 kilo of dough, don't force it more, which result in a longer stirring time. As the result, the dough temperature become warmer, become raised the heat. And the result, when you add the chocolate chips become soft and mix in the dough, then become the dough melt and then mix together with the dough. Then when you bake, the dough turns darker color and the chocolate chips disappear. That's the issue because you make in the big batch, in the large batch. So you need to understand again your utensil. If your mixer only for 3 kilos, don't push it more than 3 kilos. That's the issue. Okay. Is it better to bake cookies on the traditional top-bottom heat setting or convection setting? What cookie dough? What cookie products do you make? Each type of oven has its own advantage and disadvantage, which are different result for each cookie that it's made. Because I cannot say this cookie is better using traditional top of bottom heat, or maybe you need to having a convection. You need to understand what product first. Next question. When I bake cookies, what should I do that my cookies will not spread out and becomes flat? Now, I already explained actually in my webinar, in my presentation. Number one, you need to having correct recipe formula. Number two, you can add baking soda. Number three, stirring fat and sugar should not be too long. Remember, when you stir, the fat and sugar should be too long. Cannot. So the final temperature should not be warm. Because when the temperature warm, then it is mean the fat becomes softer. And then rest the dough in the chiller before baking. Adjust the distance of the cookies or the pan. So you need to adjust also the distance. Hi, if we use custard powder to mix in with the dry ingredients like flour, what is the effect? Thank you. You will get nice crispy melt in the mouth sensation, similar if you are using cornstarch or tapioca starch. Since this type of flour, zero protein of gluten formation, no gluten formation at all because of zero protein. So nice sensation, melt in the mouth. Your cookie. Okay. Next, what about brown butter? How important brown butter in the cookie making? You mean you want to make something like financier cookie, I think. So brown butter will give you nutty aroma in your cookie production. Usually we make financier cookie, so you need to burn the butter first, become nutty aroma. That's the function. If we use gluten-free substitute for the flour, will the cookie fall apart? For sure, the cookie will more fragile because there is no gluten formation in this type of cookies, but will not fall apart. If this happen, it is mean that something wrong in your making process. Okay, that's what I can answer. Hi chef, I will make savory cookie. For example, putting herbs like thyme, basil, rosemary. What is better, fresh or dry? What other savory flavor for cookie would you recommend? I recommend for you to using dry herb or spices. Apart from stronger aroma, they also don't add moisture to the dough besides the savory. So I like to add exotic tea aromas also. For example, I make Earl Grey cookies, jasmine tea cookie, and other types of tea. So I recommend using dry herbs, okay, or spices. Finally, last question. Oh, this is nice. Last question. How to know the right oven temperature for baking cookie, macaron, or cake? Okay. How to know the right temperature? The answer only one. By oven temperature. Okay. But if you want to know how to learn the method that my father taught me when I was child in front of the family stone oven, this is the way. Put your arm in the oven. I say put in, not touch in, okay? Not touch it. If your arms can stand in the oven, it means the temperature is still below 150 degrees Celsius. But if the hairs on your hand has started to stand up, this is sign that the temperature has started to reach maximum around 180 degrees. But when your arm cannot stand in, even in is only 1 second you cannot stand because too hot. So it is mean the temperature has been around 200 degrees Celsius. And then when you open the door of the oven, and then all the heat is already rushed out, and then you feel it's not uncomfortable in front of the oven door, it is mean the temperature is already above 220 degree. But this is only the technique, yeah. This method is only approximate, yeah, not accurate. The most precise way by oven temperature and hang in it. So that's my answer. So thank you very much for your time to give me so many questions. I try my best to answer, and then please welcome to follow Tulip Instagram or Tulip YouTube, and then you will learn more. Thank you very much. Bye.